Welcome to Explore, Explain. This is a long-form video and podcast series sharing conversations with data visualization designers and developers from around the world. Each episode explores the detailed hidden thinking behind a single project or a series of related works to explain the what, the why, and the how of the design process. So let's jump in to today's episode with your host, Andy Kirk.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Explore Explain. Welcome back to episode 3 of season 6. And in today's episode, I'm delighted to spend some time chatting with Liuhuaying Yang, who is based in Vienna. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm so impressed by your work. I'm so delighted to learn a bit more about it. For the benefit of the viewers and the listeners, would you mind just giving a short introduction, who you are, where you are, what it is you do, please?
Hello, I'm Liuhuaying. I currently work at the Complexity Science Hub, where I create web-based interactive visualizations for communicating their research results. Nice to meet you.
So I first came across your work, I think probably during 2024, and it was this sudden exposure to so many fascinating projects, not just the topics that you're covering, but the style of work that you would bring into it. I think it's a really fascinating portfolio, and we should say from the very start of this episode, it's an award-winning portfolio because you were successful in winning. I'm going to read this out properly. The 2024 Information is Beautiful Awards Gold Award for Most Impressive Individual. You won other awards as well, but that was the big one. So congratulations on that. It's a wonderful achievement and, all well deserved. But today we're going to talk about one of the projects I first encountered from your portfolio, a project called Not My Name, which I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was published around December or at least the end of last year on the Complexity Science Hub. So we're going to get into a lot of detail about that project, and then I'm sure there's lots of things that you want to share with listeners and viewers about what you did and what you didn't do and why. But just before we get into that, maybe just to start off with a bit more of your background. And I think, first of all, could you just tell us a bit more about the Complexity Science Hub in Vienna?
So we are a research institution where we have like over 70 researchers, including PhD students. And there's a multiple research groups on different topics like supply chain, network inequality, healthcare, urban sustainability. And we have a very tiny team, usually 1 or 2 people for visual team, where we create those visualizations.
I see. So you kind of work with the researchers to bring their work to life and make it more
Yeah, maybe.
accessible and maybe more impactful and more visual, rather than these sort of dusty old reports that have, we've seen from academia for so many years. And what's your background in terms of data viz? How did you get into it? What was the moment when you thought this is the thing that I want to do?
My database journey actually began in 2016, where I studied information design data visualization at the Northeastern University in Boston.
Mm,
But in the beginning, I wasn't very interested in database. I don't even know what is that. I just interested in UX design, service design there. I saw database as a possible UI UX component or part of a service. But after first year, I worked as an intern in no, MBTA is
yes.
a transportation agency.
Oh,
In,
yes.
yes, and there they I create multiple database tools for them that ended up becoming my thesis, and then I supervised by Dietmar Offenhuber. And that was my first time I learned the concept of complex systems because it was like transportation is like a big complex systems there. But then after graduating in 2018, I moved to Singapore, joined the MIT Sensible City Lab. They had an office in Singapore,
Mm.
and there I worked as a designer, but work on a commercial product called Escape. And then after the contract ended, I joined in Zaobao. It's a Chinese newsroom in Singapore. And then I intensively create a lot of interactive visual stories where I actually develop my uh, story skills,
Mm.
because before it's always dashboards or
Mm.
format. And then in 2021, I moved to Vienna and I joined the CSH. And then I relearned what is complex systems and what is complexity science. Yeah, and
Fascinating
so
background. So you've
yeah.
worked with transportation information, transit information, you've worked with commercial information, you've had some of the best tutors and supervisors and learners. So it's a wonderfully rich background. And I wonder, therefore, a project like this, Not My Name, where does it begin? Where does the idea for a project like this comes from? Is it something that was a self-motivated passion project, or was it something that you were maybe asked to work on, or what was the kind of background? What was the sort of starting point for this work?
It's a self-motivated project with passion and a struggle. Because I had this idea. I mean, after several years in living abroad, I
Hmm.
kind of have some identity crisis. I don't know if everyone experienced this. And then I get more and more interested in my own culture. And then, so I think one day I want to use my skills, database
Hmm.
skills, information design skills, to do something about it. And in 2020, which is 3 years ago, I think, and I decided, okay, I want to do a project about Chinese names. And then I explored a lot of narrative and storylines, and I tried to collect data sets, even did some analysis, even ran some simulations and tried, but I wasn't very satisfied with what I have done. I also am not confident this is really a problem or this is really a thing that people will be interested, because no one talk about it. Like for
Right.
me, I'm like I even searched it. Everyone did it before. Maybe it's not important. That's why no one talk about it. And then I tried to talk to one of our research groups at CSH. They focused on network inequality. So I'm wondering whether they have like more advanced analysis ideas, or they probably can have different
Hmm.
perspective. And they were very interested, and they told me they also face similar challenges in science of science, where they need to tear apart authors, and then they
Oh, yes.
also who have similar names,
Yeah.
and also need to infer gender for a name, those kind of thing. It is very important for them because they have to accurately tell those information to map the collaborations or trace the spread of ideas. And they always just throw out Chinese name, for example, or also other foreign names, because they don't know how to deal with it. And then I said, oh, maybe we could see if there's a way. So, but it took a very long time for us to really assemble a research team to work on the research project. And so I wasn't sure, is it still wasn't sure if it's a thing I want. I asked it in the beginning, or and so I mean we are still this research is ongoing.
Hmm.
We're still not done yet. It's been like I think like or more than 1 year. And but because it's a so long process, I have to keep telling them, explain to them how Chinese work. They always forgot, and then I have to explain again. And doing this process, I feel like, okay, I think this part itself is already a independent piece.
I
And
see.
then yes, and then I decided to create this Not My Name piece. And I also at this moment I'm much more confident what to be shown and what need to be explained, what are not important. Yeah.
Interesting. So when you think about kind of who this work is for, we always talk in data viz about design for an audience and who is the audience that we imagine will use our work. Do you think in the first instance you were designing this for yourself? in a way, and the people around you and the people in this community that you wanted to kind of make sense of this struggle that you talked about. But maybe along the way, it also became a tool for people like me who don't understand the background towards this this sort of translation of symbols to more anglicized language. Is it something that sort of grew in scope as you got more and more into the exploration of it, but also into the design of the eventual work that you created?
In the very beginning, I just want to tell a story. So
Yeah.
what I really think about, I just thought, okay, some people will feel related, and then
Mm.
maybe more Chinese because they experience similar problem. But later on, I feel like, okay, this piece must be uh, for non-Chinese speakers. That's the meaning of
Yeah.
why I want to tell this story, because I want to show them, you see, this is problem we are experiencing. And then this is really matters because then what to explain and how to explain matters because they don't know the language. They many things I feel excited. They people don't get it. Then many decisions actually become more clear after since I decided this. Yeah.
And I suppose that's the essence, I would imagine, of the complexity science hub, which is to make the complex clearer, but also, and this is something I feel is really important, not to necessarily make it simple, because sometimes simplifying reduces the essence of a topic. And I think what you've done so superbly with this is you've preserved the nuances and the complexity, so the complicatedness of this subject matter, but allowed people like me to sort of understand it better and to spend time with it and learn about it. And I think that's a real talent that you've got there. We'll get into the details of the data, the research, and the design shortly. But just in terms of the context of the work, you've said that it's a more of a sort of self-motivated piece. But did you yourself have any constraints that you either had to face or that you wanted to impose on yourself? For example, did you set yourself a deadline for when this would be finished? Did you set yourself a challenge that this would be only for digital, or could it have also been for print? I don't think it is something that lends itself to print necessarily. Maybe as a beautiful artifact, but not as a in the same way because we need the audio, which we'll come on to later on. But what were the sort of constraints or the contextual factors that you were facing or that you imposed on yourself when you started this project?
I don't. That's the problem. I didn't have. Because when you have a like sort of side project, the
Yeah,
main is you have deadline and then you just endlessly explore an idea
keep going. Yeah,
until you feel okay, I am comfortable to publish it. And for this piece, I never feel comfortable the, until the this one, the Not My Name came out. And I also actually thought about to have some other formats even physical or
yeah.
electronic. But I don't have this kind of skill. So it's a totally new areas. And then I actually tried to reach out some people to get collaboration. I mean, luckily now I'm working with artist Melinda Shibush, and she's helping me with the physical installation of this
Oh, very
piece.
good.
Yes.
I'll look forward to seeing that. Yeah, it does feel like something that could be encountered in a museum, in a gallery, in any kind of institute, in a physical environment that you can press and touch and listen to and interact with. I think it could be something very exciting. So we'll look forward to that in due course. Now, we all have a different approach to data viz, certainly at the starting point, but in most cases, we start off at least with some ideas coming to mind about what this thing might look like. Now, what this thing did look like in the end, and we'll get into this in more detail soon, is something of a sort of a tree structure with leaves and branches. Was that Your first idea. Were there any other ideas that you began with, sketching or gathering little notes, little clips from other works? What were, if we looked at your ideas board at the start of this process, what would it look like? What would we see there?
In the beginning, I had I as Chinese is my native language, I never know how big the letters when they cluster together. If I group them by tones, group them by pinyin, how big this whole image
Mm.
is, I never know. So I first tried out to just plot out to see this. So you can imagine it's a cluster bubble chart or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's always going to be of
And
that nature, kind of clustering and using elements to build up some whole.
yeah, like in the beginning, I start with force layout networks, but they are not always connected. So
Mm.
I switch to more clustered circles, for example, the packed
Mm.
circles, this
Yeah,
kind of just to see how big and the issue is. And this is usually how I start with all my projects.
yeah.
And then later on, I feel like it's a bit boring. It's big, yeah, so what? And then it's not showing an idea. So I also trying to say how I can visualize the ambiguity instead.
Mm.
And then I'm trying to layer the characters on top each other. So if you just see everything's blurred, that means there's a many characters
Yes.
overlaid. And then it shows this ambiguity.
Yeah. And that's such
But
a
then,
difficult
yeah.
thing as well, showing uncertainty, showing ambiguity. Um, but again, it's something that you handle very well and others increasingly handle very well, which is say there's loads of mess there, and let's just accept that it's messy and it's imperfect. We don't have to make everything perfect. We can just give a little hope to nonsense, to messiness. So I think that's handled very well. But I suppose another important starting point sometimes is to look at other works that have been produced that are out there about something similar. Now, this is such a unique investigation. I can't personally think of anything in my experience of the last 20 years that is remotely the same. I can think of investigations into patterns around popularity of names, baby names. I can think about things like genealogy, sort of dendrograms of ancestors and sort of the structures of surnames. But this is such a unique investigation. Did you find any other sources of inspiration or reference to get you going, or was it something that was just simply a blank page, a blank screen, and you'll start it without any influence from outside?
I have to say, since I work in a complex science hub, we have like most of the people are from outside of Austria, and they're like one third people actually are European. And European has a so diverse cultures,
Mm.
and then and we that's a kind of a common topic we had during a tea time or lunchtime, and always chat about how your name system works or what your culture there. And then I feel like okay, everyone has a baby name
Yeah,
list.
yeah,
Even there are differences of at least, but everyone has a baby name list. And what we don't have. And then this is something really new, and they are very interested. Oh, why you don't have? Then how you decide the name, how it works. That's also one of the motivation that I want to do this piece. And then I actually before I had the idea about names, I actually saw the piece from um, the continentist,
oh
the
yes.
yes, they are based in Singapore. They actually had a piece about what the how Chinese name involved, but they focused on the ca character selections, like
Okay.
which characters are more popular in names, which names is more popular. Um, And I saw that. I remember that piece. And then also this piece introduced me this one of the data sets I used. But then the angle is a bit different. They are because all those information as a Chinese, I would be interested, but I'm not sure other cultures people will be that interested in which characters to
Yes.
use. Yes. And then another piece is called Hanzi Universe. I don't know if you have heard about it. They actually create a network to see the similarity of the character strokes.
Oh,
So
okay.
just they are shared how similar the character looks like.
Yeah.
And there's nothing about meaning, nothing about names, this kind. But it's as also interesting because many people notice that there's this.
Similarities.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was clear something that although there are little sources of reference of other works, it's such a brand new piece. So it does give you a certain degree of freedom to think I can do what I want to do. I can explore it in how my design sensibilities take me forward. And so before we get into the design choices that you made, there is this big amount of work that you've gone through in terms of sourcing the data and getting familiar with the data and making decisions about that data in terms of what will be useful, what would be beyond the scope of your inquiry, what is just too complex and messy to try and make sense of for this piece. Obviously, we could spend hours just talking about this alone, but maybe just in terms of the headlines, what was your experience working with the data? What are the things that we, as the users of this piece of work, can't possibly imagine that you went through in terms of handling, sourcing, analyzing the data? What are the sort of stories you went through there?
I basically very appreciate we have the data set called Chinese Name Database. It shows all the names, the real people's names, because it's census data, I guess, from 1930 to 2008. This gives me the usage of the names and characters, which is very important for this piece. Of course, there's how do I have to decide where to stop the list of the characters because actually there are more than 8,000. There's like 30,000 probably in total if you think about that. And then I have to mimicking this scenarios as a parent when you select a name for your baby. And I think about all the story I heard, the other senior people told me how they select the name and think about how it work. Those are the moment I have decided the scope of the data. Yeah.
And you mentioned that you chose to focus on, I think I've got on the list here, 2,936 characters that are used as surnames or appearing given names of at least one person per million. So what you've clearly established there is that there's a need for a cutoff. There's a
Mhm.
need for something that a criteria for inclusion and a criteria for exclusion, just to stop this whole thing becoming so overwhelmingly big and complex. Um, I mean, at what point did you decide that? Were you already quite deep into the design stage and then realize that this is becoming so big and complicated that you need to go back and maybe sort of reduce? Or was it something clear when you were just looking at the data that you needed some kind of criteria to cope?
I didn't decide. Beginning I work with 8,000 and I
Right,
created big. But I decided to cut off not because it's too big, it's because I realized that so many characters are so uncommon.
right, okay.
In my experience, I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I never see this in my whole life. And and some characters are very weird. And then I decided to use the usage to cut off these parts. And then in this data, I already indicate like they have the value, like say equal to 6 means very rare, rare, rare.
Mm.
So I decided to cut it, and then I look at the data again. It much more makes sense.
Yeah, and that's something that you can't teach that. You can't teach that sense of what's the right way to judge what to include or exclude. Because there's all sorts of thoughts around being faithful to the subject and being complete and being accurate, but then also just being realistic and reasonable about what is actually relevant to include. So that is a judgment that is always down to our fingertips that we make ourselves in any piece of work. But as you've done in your work, you've told people, here's what's not included, so that it's not, you're not hiding anything. You're just saying, look, here's what's included, here's what's excluded, and here's why. So that's a very clear sort of rationale, really. Um,
To mention, I have to explain as well, data methods clearly because I know I will have quite many Chinese audience,
mm.
and they will question me. They will have doubts and ask, how did you deal with this situation?
Yeah.
Then I decide, okay, I will clearly list all the decisions.
Here's all my workings. Yeah.
Yes.
And obviously, when you're working with an academic environment, they're always asking, where did you get the data? What was included? What was excluded? So,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, that sense of methods is always important. It doesn't always need to be a huge essay, long, detailed
Mhm.
statement, but just a sense of transparency is always important. So we move on to the visuals. Actually, we move on to the designs. It's not just the visuals. A crucial part of this is the layer of audio, the sound that comes with this piece. And just sort of to describe to people, so there are three main components to the project. There's the sort of landing page and the project and topic introduction, where we see this kind of beautiful kind of hero image, a little sort of tantalizing intro with a couple of examples of names that have been translated to Pinyin. And then we get a little bit of a story that sort of breaks down it's sort of the sort of the 101 basics of how this translation has been formed and the components of the characters and the names that are formed. And so that holds our hand. It kind of guides us through the kind of introduction. The second part is an explorer where we can just dive into the data, play around with different names, inquiries, by entering our specific interests or just browsing, just moving around this huge, what I've called a field of trees. And then we've got the about page, which is, as you said, is the methods and the details of your rationale, your data. So just coming back to the main project to begin with, and just sort of walking through some of the parts of this. First of all, this hero image, this main kind of backdrop, which is formed out of the trees and the fields and the leaves that we see later on. I suppose simple question is, do you feel it's important to have this kind of centerpiece image to draw people in, to give people a sense of what's to come, but to also pique their interest, I guess.
I always like to have a cover image, sort of cover image to make
Mm.
people prepare, like see, you're gonna see something very complicated
Yeah,
or complex,
yeah,
and they will curious, so they should trigger their curiosity, kind of, yeah.
absolutely. And I think it's increasingly used even in non, um, I don't know, non-journalism pieces. It's increasingly a popular element to include. And if we think about, let's imagine the office, the workplace, PowerPoint presentations will have a title image. So let's use
Mhm.
them. Let's
Yes.
use them for something that's not just title and name. Let's do something a bit more fun. And especially in this, which gives us a flavor of what's to come in terms of the visual style and the components. You've then got a short intro, and I'm imagining, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here again, but I'm imagining that you wanted to have a short intro that fitted in to the kind of classic screen space so that people could get a quick sense of what's to follow. And if they want to carry on, scroll down. So is that correct? It's sort of a quite short, straight to the point, intro that also gives us a little bit of an insight into an example or two.
Yes, that's the point. So usually I start with a one sentence short kind of describe what is going on.
Yeah,
Because sometimes we have some like a bit short name, title name, and people might have to guess what it's really about.
yeah,
Especially this one is quite unusual.
yeah,
And then I usually will have one more sentence to describe it really what it's really about. And then we'll go start with the first question I want to answer it or get attention from people. Okay, this is a question will be answered if you look it up.
if you carry on, yeah, if you stick around. And what we then get really are, I think it's three main sections within this introductory story, which is to begin with the structure of Pinyin names. Then we move on to some of the ambiguities around Pinyin, and then some of the challenges. And I think, again, what you're doing here is you're acknowledging and you're embracing the fact that there are nuances and ambiguities that we can pretend don't exist, but they do. So let's acknowledge them and let's kind of work through those, but also to explain to people why you've therefore tried to eliminate some of those ambiguities in the main piece itself. But just starting off with the structure of the Pinyin names and actually a broader question to ask about just the task of writing for this piece. You know, there's quite a lot of descriptive text. How easy did you find it to tell the story in written form? How many drafts or edits did you go through in terms of the text that we see?
I think I have tons of as I said, this draft I started 3 years ago, and then I have also I have different formats. I have draft in doc, I have draft in slides, and I have draft just in images, and in many versions. And I just want to have a really like good, straightforward
Yeah,
storyline there. And many components I just throw away. I feel like it's not important. So I just in it because like I said, later I'm more confident in what to say. So
yeah,
I really know, I look at all my drafts again and I really understand. And then I feel like, okay, those parts are keep repeating, showing up. And those are important. I have to explain. Those are not important. So then I kind of just follow from a previous draft and then have the final draft. And then I start at, okay, here I need the visuals together, and here I need some interaction.
yeah. So with any written material that goes with a visualization, as you've expressed there, it's almost what not to say because there's so much that you could say. It's about leaving things out that
Exactly.
although you've become very precious and you think these are all important things, you have to have that discipline to say, just because I can doesn't mean to say I should. And I think what I feel with as a reader of this is that you've got the right balance. It's enough information for me to understand what I'm seeing, but it's not a huge thesis that I'm having to work through and page after page after page. And as you said, there's a nice rhythm as well of maybe there's a paragraph and then there's a little visual explainer, another paragraph, and then a different explainer. And what you're building up here for the viewer is simultaneously a description of Pinyin, but also establishing the visual representation, or at least the representation of how you're going to explain this. So the first thing that we encounter is this, what I'm going to call a leaf motif.
Mhm.
Um, is it a leaf? But also, what different versions of shape or symbol did you explore using? Did it land very quickly that a leaf structure or shape was the metaphor that you felt was the best way to kind of give a home to these characters?
No, it wasn't even trees. Actually, in the beginning, I thought about using square because Chinese are written in squares, so it's very
Okay.
Chinese. And it's not difficult, just change circles to squares. And I tried, and I wanted to use that. I just had another project before this project I was working on. I created this kind of gardens, and then I used trees and just kind of organic or dynamics
Yeah.
going on between trees. And I really love this kind of metaphor. And then I feel like, okay, then now if you're gonna see a massive point on screen, maybe it will be nice it's something natural.
Yes.
Yes. And then I decided to use trees. But in the beginning, it's just a circle.
Yeah.
And then at some point, since I have to show different tones, like one character could have multiple tones, that means there are multiple colors. I had to figure out how to color them.
Oh, yes.
So then I decided to use the portion of the circle. And then I feel, okay, then it actually looks a bit like a
Perfect.
ginkgo leaf or so. And then I end up the leaves.
And I think what's beautiful about the leaves, apart from and beyond just the metaphor, which I think works really well here, um, is that these are shapes that almost tessellate, so that when you create the whole tree, there's just a nice, clean, filled structure created out of them. Whereas obviously squares would do that. Um, Hexagons would do that. Circles don't, because circles, there's always little gaps between the edges of the circle. So I think what this shape does so well is it creates a motif for an individual unit, but a beautiful collective shape from all the characters joined together. So I think it's a super successful choice. You mentioned there the color, and that's what we move on to next, which is a color categorization for the different tones, the four different tones of pronunciation. And I suppose a simple question to ask here is why did you choose these four particular colors? Was it relatively random, just four different enough colors?
I mean, I explored multiple color group. Some are more bright, some are more uh, ice cream feelings,
Yeah.
and I don't know how I end up this. I just feel they looks more neutral somehow.
Yeah, and they're very kind
Yeah.
of calm tones. They're sort of almost semi-saturated. They're not pure,
Yeah.
loud, intense
And
color.
I also did the color blend test, make sure it's distinguishable.
Yes, very important, especially when it's such a significant distinction that you're trying to establish. Pronunciation is key to everything here,
Mhm.
and it's also where we get the first piece of audio. So we get a little sound file to go with each of these different categorizations. Once again, from the outside, from my perspective, it seems inevitable that you would have had to use audio on this project. Were you clear from the beginning that you were definitely going to use audio as well? Or was that something that you initially felt would just be the visual? And then at some point you thought, I have to find a way to incorporate a sound file as well.
I had this idea later. But may I ask, can you tell the difference?
Yes.
The tones. You
Yeah, I
can?
can. And I think
Because
it's
yeah, I'm sorry.
no, no, I can tell the difference. And I think it's what I love about the those four different tones is just the simplified symbol that you use in the
Uh-huh.
key, where you've got either a sort of a leaning down line, a
Yes.
little kind of almost like a V shape, an upward line, because I can hear what they sound like. I can imagine in
Uh-huh.
my head what they sound like before I even hear them. So I think
Uh-huh.
it works super successfully. And I immediately want to press all the audios. I want to listen to it because they are so different. And even just to the ear, they sound so different. But when you also understand that the meaning is so
Uh-huh.
different, this is this is a high stakes thing to get right because I can imagine there's lots of confusion takes place if you just intonate that tone differently.
So actually, I wasn't sure it's helpful for this reason for tones, because my experience is many Westerns cannot hear the difference. And then when you tell them, okay, here is a different tones, but they always associate with rule out or the
Oh
accent,
yes,
which is
yeah,
different concepts, and they cannot understand this kind of just the tonal differences.
yeah,
And so I say, okay, I add audio, but some people still cannot hear the differences. So I add color. I added the pin this symbol. Keep the symbol. Actually, it was original, and I hope they can hear the differences. But most importantly, I feel like many people, even we use like this Latin script, that doesn't mean you know how to translate it.
yeah,
That's also my experience, because Pinyin is a little bit different than the English pronunciation. So I think at least you know how properly translate this word. Even you cannot get the tone correctly. Yeah.
yeah. And I think obviously it's one thing to hear examples in isolation, but to then be able to, I don't know, visit the streets of Beijing and hear it would be another thing. That would be a much harder thing to pick up from scratch. But it's no, it's a very effective layer of detail. And I mean the other thing that we get at this point is also some like initial statistics. And I just wondered, as we go through this page, there are various sort of summary statistics about the number of pronunciations or the number of uh, differences in pronunciation, the frequency. So obviously, I could imagine there are many statistics that you could have shared from your analysis of the data. And it feels like you've been, again, like the writing, you've been quite careful to not show or share everything, just some of the key stats. Is that a fair comment?
Yes, yes, because actually, if you are Chinese, you will know there's a tons of things that I didn't mention, or anyone knows Mandarin. But I feel like even this piece, current piece, it's already quite enough information to digest.
Yeah,
And that's that if someone doesn't know Mandarin Chinese and they look at this piece, understand this piece of information, that's all the task performed for
yeah,
this piece.
yeah.
So I delete all the information and not necessary just to make sure this individual message is delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about the audio, the first audio interaction, and we then get quite soon after that another little interaction, which is this chance to shuffle,
Mhm.
to switch different examples, so we can hear different examples, to sort of get us into the topic. I think what strikes me about the piece overall is, again, the discipline that you've had to not try and include every possible interaction. There are very little minimal amounts of tasks that you ask of us as the user. Just click on this. Just choose that. So once again, just I guess the question is, I think it's absolutely a smart choice to have this little shuffle option. Were you tempted to do more interactivity at this point, or did you want again to minimize the amount of work on me as I'm working through this story, not to sort of slow the progress, I guess.
You mean in the explorer part?
Yeah, sorry, no, in the intro part,
Intro part.
as I'm trying to work my way through this kind of story to introduce the topic, I guess I don't want to keep having to stop and interact with lots of things and then move
Uh-huh.
on. The interactions that you ask of me is quite limited. Shuffle,
Yes.
click.
Yes. Actually, I in the beginning implemented scrollytelling,
Right.
and I always feel fancy to do that. But then I feel like it's just too much. Like, for example, now you see I have after I introduce one tree with E, And then actually the initial design that then you will see all the trees. You already see the garden, and I will tell you, see there's a 200 or 300 trees
Yeah.
there. And then you zoom into one of the tree and continue. And I just deleted that part. Feel like it's unnecessary to introduce the whole
I see.
garden at
Yeah.
that moment. They can go later. I still have something I need to explain more. So there's a back and forth thinking to
Yeah.
limit it.
And I think it's well judged because again, I think you're right. To give me access to the field at this point is too soon. As you
Yes.
said, I need to learn more about the not just the structure of these trees, but also as we get into very shortly, um, the association that you make with these ovals underneath
Hmm.
the tree base, which is the usage in given name for surname and for give sorry for surnames and given names, um, to indicate some notion of frequency. So, as you said, there's more things that you need to convey first. I suppose another quick design question, because everything's done with deliberacy, is how did you arrange the leaves on the trees? What's the sort of rationale behind why one is at the top, or maybe one is at the bottom, or was it just a random distribution of leaves on each tree?
I tried many different layouts for arrange them. In the beginning, I just used because I use D3. So D3 had this automatic sorting, like you sort by whatever the attributes,
Yeah.
for example, usage, and then the circle will be start from the center and spread out, right, the order. But it is a circle, so it's not a tree. So I have to cut a part of the bottom, like it's like a canopy. So how I did it is that I do two rounds of the layout, and then only I generate 20% more circles, and I
Okay.
just use the top parts. And then I can also sort them by from top to bottom and the left to right based on in the beginning I tried to use the usage as well. And then I feel like actually I didn't need to show individual usage. And then what I saw that just add one more layer I had to explain, which is not necessary. So I decided, okay, then just sort by color. And this is also the together component that I decided the color. I wanted it's like a bit shading,
Hmm.
like trees that you from top is more cold blue and green, and later is more brown kind of thing. I
Yeah.
even observe the tree and the trees to see how they change colors.
No, that makes sense. I think it's a totally justifiable choice as well. Um, and then yeah, obviously there are more sections that we can sort of just quickly skip through in terms of the intro, in terms of the other examples that you gave, some of the other context and ambiguities that you explained, and then really you've got this flash in go to Explorer, which is again I think another subtle design choice, which is it could have been just go to Explorer, but you've made it Pulse. Why did you think that was important?
I want people to go to explore because then they can shuffle names,
Yeah,
which is the main point. I mean, the main point I think is the explorer, but they need to understand more things
yeah,
and before they go to explorer. And I had some experience that people after reading and they just and then it's go explorer and I'm done and I don't want to go,
yeah.
or they just not notice this button. And I use the kind of a light color for this button because I don't want to use dark color, it's
Yes,
too much. But then you use light color, they might ignore it.
yeah.
So I thought, okay, then I maybe just make it shiny and then they have to click that.
No,
Yeah.
I think it works very well. It makes me want to click it. There's something very compelling and inviting, almost challenging me to click on this button, which, as you said, then takes you to this, I guess, which is the centerpiece of the whole project, which is this big field of trees of all the different names. Am I correct in thinking that there are let me just look at my notes again. 375 trees, or something around that. There's definitely a lot of trees in this field. Now, I suppose my first question about this is, you said at the start that you knew this was going to be a huge amount of content. And I suppose these days we are much more, as users, we are much more likely to be happy to scroll and to move around a view that doesn't fit into a standard rectangle of a screen. But you've still got to make a judgment of how big is too big. So were you at any point thinking of shrinking the trees down to make them smaller, or did you feel that this was the correct zoom level to still see the character strokes and not make it too overwhelming, but still get the right balance?
Yes, I also I had some feedbacks that they from Western colleagues that they not really interesting to see strokes. They don't really
They
care.
can't
They
see
just
them. Yeah,
they can some not even can tell they are different characters.
right.
So they only need to know, okay, there are different characters. They don't really need to look into detail, compare which one is which one. Not even that much. Some people are interested, but not everyone interested in the meaning of the characters. And so then I feel like, okay, then they just need to be a right size and they know, okay, they are different. I don't need to zoom to too big to show the details. Also, for my other project, I always like to show the big picture, which means I
Yeah,
have to zoom out a lot to see many tiny trees on the screen. And then at that time, I had my team member Tobias, and he also gives some feedbacks, and we we decide that okay, even the point is to show people there's so many trees you can explore, and then it's actually more fun that you just show part of it, and they have to scroll
yeah.
down left and right and to explore it. Then you show many things and have to ask them to zoom in. It's better experience than.
Yeah, and also you give them the other navigation option, which is through the menu, where you can enter a surname or a given
Mhm.
name or both if you've got a specific inquiry, but also the shuffle, which just brings up a random selection of different names. And I think from memory, some of those are sort of famous names and well-known people's names, so we can get something that's maybe perhaps a bit more instantly relatable for us to get into the topic as well. Just another question I've got about the layout, which is in some cases, the certainly the ovals of the trees, the base of the trees, are kind of almost hidden behind nearby trees. So, for example, I'm looking at the screen now, and I can see the tree for Zhang, and part of the oval is almost hidden. And I quite like that because I can imagine it's big. I don't need to
Mhm.
see it in its entirety, but it maintains, therefore, a nice even distribution of trees in the space that we have. So once again, I guess the question is, at what point did you notice that was happening? And did you do sort of yourself decide, I'm okay with that. I'm okay if some of these are hidden by the other trees.
Yes, I'm okay with that. I tried and then to make them closer or far away, and then I feel it's nice they have a little bit overlap, and then you see they are together, and but you still can recognize them. So that's actually better than they are all far away from each other, and then
Yeah,
yeah.
I think, and that empty space would probably just turn me off a little bit more because it gives me more route, more space I have to visit and browse through.
Yes,
So I
exactly.
completely agree. Another quick question I forgot to ask before in terms of the written content, and it extends to the labels that we see. What is the typeface that we see used for the English language text? And did you go on different variations of the font, or is that maybe a standard font type used by the Complexity Science Hub?
Yeah, that's the standard fonts.
Okay. So in a sense, you didn't have to think about choices because I don't know about you, but when it comes to choosing typeface, I will just endlessly try different ones, and I
Yeah.
like them all, and I never know how to choose. But if it's chosen for you, then that's
I mean, before we didn't have this new branding identity came only like 2023
mm,
beginning. So before I also have to select the fonts, and some have to be more playful.
yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
but now it's easy.
Absolutely right, yeah. Um, I mean, the other quick things that we've got here, we've got a question mark, which brings up a pop-up key. So you've always got that sense of what these colors stand for, what the leaves stand for, and the tones as well. And just a final question about the tones. How did you source or generate the sound files that we hear? Is this something that's AI driven, or is there a database of sound files that you could retrieve and use?
Actually, I found that there's a resources for learning Mandarin.
Okay.
So they have all the audio files, and then I can use. And then I actually found a multiple version, and I think this sounds better.
Right. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
what I like about them is that they're very clear,
Yes.
but also they're very short. There's no empty space,
Yes. Yes.
useless
Yes.
time. It's all very kind of elegant and efficient. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, are there any other little details that I've missed that you want to share with people that you went through that you decided to choose? Are any other little things that you want to tell people about?
I don't know if people notice that there's sometimes if you shuffle names, the one probably few names, you will see many trees, like multiple groups of trees, and two groups trees.
Oh
Because
yeah.
when the given name together, I will add a link to link there. There's a give one given name, but there are some cases that you might see multiple groups or two groups.
Yeah.
And that's because this pinyin sleeping issue that like we have multiple characters, but when we write them, we join them without space. Then now you need to infer what was original Chinese, then you have to first of all split the pinyin first, and then to guess the character for each part.
Okay.
And how then this can be already confusing for even for native, how where to split it. For example, she and is a two words, but when you write together is Xian, and then you could translate the Xian, which is a single character.
Okay.
But then how to split it, it's a thing. It's a
Yeah.
mystery. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. This is such a challenging project, There's so
Yeah.
many difficult things that you've had to sort of make sense of and make clearer to people like me from the outside. So no, it's wonderful to learn about the design story there. Now, just as we sort of wrap things up and look back at your reflections of this project, what are your kind of overriding thoughts as you look back now? Are you satisfied with the project? I mean, you've already mentioned there are other things to come, not just in terms of further research to the subject, but also hopefully this sort of physical piece. But how do you sort of look back now and think how happy you are with what you created?
I actually surprised how many people interested in this pieces. I didn't. I thought maybe some people would be interested, but I didn't because I posted on LinkedIn in the beginning. I had so many likes I never had, and I was like, okay, this is something people really feel relatable, and so I actually quite satisfied with what I have.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean, the other thing, obviously, that sometimes that we go through when we're working on a project like this is that we learn. And I suppose the question is, therefore, has it taught you something that you didn't know about Mandarin, about Pinyin, about naming structures? Are there things that you thought, oh, I never knew that, and now I know this better?
For me, it's like because for since I born pinyin, we learned pinyin in school already. So actually, I never thought about pinyin as something new. Actually, it's also it's not only romanization system. for Mandarin. It's quite late thing. And
Yeah.
then actually, if you look at older, like people in 80s or 90s or even earlier, those famous people, Chinese people, they are quite well known in West, but they using different the normalization system. And then this is actually I never know why they spelling like that. I thought, okay, maybe at that time there's a we use traditional Chinese, and so there's another thing together. So for me, it's like a journey to learn more about
Yeah.
our language. Yeah.
And as you look back again on your process, is there any part of it that you feel is your favorite part, whether it's the design that we see? Is there a favorite part of that design that you see now and think, yes, I love that bit? Or was there a favorite moment in your process where you were just delighted to have solved or worked something out? What's your sort of favorite sort of takeaway from this project?
I really like shuffle names.
Yeah,
I spend a lot of time to figure out what name to put there. Those names have to be famous for West,
yeah,
and and then there's a different domains. Like someone are artists, someone are athletes, and someone are politics and or physicists or scientists. And then I also learned those people too, and to see okay, oh they why they prefer a English name using in West when they active
yeah,
there. That part actually quite fun.
yeah. No, absolutely. I like that as well. And it just kind of keeps on giving little delights. And yeah, wonderful project. Thank you so much for going through it. As you said, this piece got a lot of likes and a lot of in a data viz context, it went viral amongst our community, and for very good reason. So, congratulations on what you've done there. Congratulations on all the awards that you've deservedly picked up in recent times. And I look forward to whatever comes next, whether it's further work on this project or other works from the Complexity Science Hub. So, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you to all the viewers and listeners out there for tuning in today. See you next time.
Thank you.
To see more information about today's episode, including some links to key sites and resources mentioned, please visit my website at visualizingdata.com. Here you'll also be able to find details about my book, information about my public and private training courses, as well as over a decade of blog posts. If you've enjoyed this series, please consider liking, subscribing and spreading the word. See you next time.